What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful night tonight, and the time is 11 p.m. 11 p.m. We're gonna have a little drinky poo right now. A little bit. This is Uncle Nearest. I don't know nearest to what, but so this is the 1856 version, premium whiskey, 100 proof. And I will say, because I've had it before, I've had this bottle a very long time, but I've had it before. Exceptional, really good stuff. Water, delicious. Has a very nice aroma. Yeah, it's if you smell this, you'll see what I'm talking about. That's it. Remember, drink responsibly. Do not drink and drive. You will find yourself wrapped around an oak tree, telephone pole, and they'll take you out in pieces. So always drink a little bit, enjoy it. Alcohol is meant to be enjoyed in small amounts. Big amounts, toxic. Get that nice color. That smells very, very nice. I feel like I detect like a little bit of vanilla in there, something sweet. That's amazing. Very delicious. So today I was thinking about fourth, fifth grade. Those were the years where I discovered library. Discovered the library. I remember in the third grade, my teacher complained about me on some issue, and we got into it at school. I'm a third grader, she's a grown woman, and we got into it. So she calls my mother, and then I get home and my father's like, we'll find you a desk. I didn't have a desk up until then. I would do my homework in the kitchen. So we went out and we went to Sears. We bought a nice desk that I had for many years. And I was like thinking one time, maybe I want to do my homework in the library after school. So I would get home, I would change up, and then I would go down to the library. And in those days, the library closed at 6 o'clock. So it wasn't like a late thing. But the reason I bring this up is I was remembering a dude that would be in that library. So they had two sections. They had the kids section, and then they had the grown-up section that was on the other side. And the other side had little couches and stuff. The grown-ups would go there and kick back. And there was a few of them back there. But generally the library was empty, except for me and a few other people, but mostly empty. And in the wintertime, it would get dark early. So it felt like you were there, night hours. But there was always this guy from Israel. He would come in there at around 4:30, and he would sit one table up from me, and he would take out the Israeli newspaper and start reading it. And he was there every day like me, every day. He'd stay for about an hour, read the paper, and then he'd leave. I don't know who that was, but saw him every day. Once in a while, towards the end, he'd give me a nod. Give me one of these, like, I acknowledge that you're sitting there. But I would do my homework there. still remember the tables, big brown tables. And then if I got a little bored, I would get up and walk around the library. They had a section on ghost stories. I used to love going there. They had these cool images. I remember one of them was a kind of like a staircase going up to this big house, and the ghost was floating in the picture, like Scooby-Doo. So I always wonder whatever happened to that guy. He used to come in there. But yeah, then I'd go home, and it would be dark, and my home was about 10 blocks away. Doesn't sound like much, but 10 blocks is, a bit of a distance. And I'd walk home at night, and I look at kids now. So what, fourth grade, you're like 10 years old. 10 years old, I'm walking home at night. Today it's unusual. I've said this many times, but in my time, being out on your own, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old was not a big, it wasn't a big thing, and it wasn't uncommon. That was me. I was out, on my own early in life. And I remember walking home after, you'd finish your homework and everything. And then that's when I discovered the encyclopedia. Doing research on something. Teacher would say, look up Gandhi. And then I'd go to the library, pull it out, and I'd write about Gandhi after I'd read the encyclopedia article. And I remember the people working there. They were all, there was a few old people, but the majority were young people. And I bet you now they're old. Yeah, that's the formula for this, whatever it is, they got it down right. So the thing I remember about that library experience was that across the street was it was like a little pharmacy store right in the corner. Eventually became a Chinese restaurant now, what it is, but back then it was you could buy stationery in there, gum, shampoo, things like that. And occasionally my pen would dry out. I'd say, I need a new pen. And I'd go in there and I'd walk around, and there was one guy always in there at the register, quiet little, corner. And I'd buy a Bic pen. And then I'd go back across the street to the library and continue my education. But I did that for a while. But I've always been a library guy. I mean, now that I'm older with kids, I haven't been to the library in quite a long time. But there was a time when I was at the library at least once a week. It doesn't sound like much, but it's much. So I would go downtown LA. Start off at the top floors, do an investigation, go down, all the way down to the bottom where they had the records. And then one time, I'm big on getting mail. Now you get emails, but back in those days, mail was impressive. I always loved going down to the box, opening it up and getting all this mail. But my mail, nothing was coming, I had a P.O. box. I'd go down there every day, open it up, part of my routine, empty inside. Nothing. So I said, you know what, I gotta get some people to send me catalogs. So I went to the library and I went down, they had this section on catalogs, big books of all these companies across the country that would give you free catalogs. So I went there with a big loose leaf pad, and I wrote letters that day. To whom it may concern, I'm interested in receiving a free catalog from you. Thank you, Nick. Fold it up, put it in, and I had a stack of envelopes, and I mailed them all. And then, I don't know, about 10, 15 days went by, and I started receiving stuff, catalogs. You know what they do? They sell your name after. And before you know it, I mean, you may have sent out 100 letters, but now all of a sudden, like 1,000 companies know you, and every single day I was getting, you know, camping equipment catalogs, you name it, things like that, hardware, everything. I'd go down there and my mailbox would be stuffed. And then it got to the point where I was getting so much stuff that they would leave me a slip inside telling me, take the slip to the front because you have mail that wouldn't fit in your box. So, and most of it was junk mail. I'd say 80% of it was junk mail. But I would get interesting catalogs. So I did that, and yeah, it was fun. You know, you're like, oh man, I got some, you know, it's like opening up a prize. A Cracker Jacker. It's not Cracker Jacker, is it? Cracker Jacks. Used to get those prizes inside. But yeah, back then snail mail was impressive. Even in my house when I was younger, I used to send away for stuff. And the mailman back then, we had a guy, his name was Charlie. And he showed up every day around 11:05, 11. He was like on schedule, his whole career on schedule. And then I'd hear the box downstairs, you know, what do they call that? The slot slam. I'd hear it boom, and I'd go up, he came, and I'd run down there and I'd get my mail, get my father's stuff, put it aside, then I'd read my stuff. I was a big letter writer in those days. I would sit down at nighttime with my yellow legal pad, and I would write letters, whatever I wanted. Please send me this, please send me a catalog. But yeah, I was always excited. And then he retired. And after that, for years and years, we had a mailman that would come, you know, 10 a.m., then he'd come at noontime, then he'd come at 3, then he'd come at 4, then he'd come, you know, noontime again. It was always all over the place. So I didn't have that, you know, I know he's coming at 11, because I knew the other guy, Charlie. I'd look out the window and I'd see him up at the top, and he'd start walking down, and by the time he get to my house, it would be like 11 o'clock. And if my letter or whatever had the wrong address on it, as long as the name was on there, he knew where to bring it. So, but he retired, and then, you know, we had all these different people. Every few months there would be a new person delivering mail. But yeah, I love the post office. I used to send away for catalogs all the time. And I was a big radio listener at nighttime. Love listening to the radio, AM talk. I mean, obviously I love the music, but at nighttime I used to listen to talk radio. I have mentioned that I used to listen to Norm Nathan. At nighttime, you could be in New Jersey and pick up Norm Nathan. You could be in I think one time I was picking him up down in North Carolina, Norm Nathan, at night. I used to listen to him a lot, and I enjoyed him. He was light, wasn't controversial, or, you know, sometimes you just want to listen to something light. But he's no longer around, so we don't have that. Back then there were a lot of legendary DJs. Wolfman Jack, Casey Kasem, that duck guy there, Rick Dees, the Grease Man. Yeah, grew up on the radio. I would listen to the radio when AM played rock and roll. That's how far back I go. And out here there was a DJ, Michael Jackson, like English guy, very popular. I used to listen to Jerry Williams. You know, there's all these legendary guys that no longer exist. Now it's a handful of guys, they dominate. Everything is, you know, cross the country. Times change. Very quiet. Very quiet out. A couple of cars go by. You wonder where they're going. Well, tell me, where you guys going? Go home. Get some sleep. Yeah, when I was a kid, I would get up at like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and I'd look out the window, fall time, and some lonely car would be driving by with a lonely driver, and I would think to myself, where's this guy going? 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, when you're younger, 2 o'clock seems like a long ways off. Yeah, I remember New Year's Eve, guy with the bass. I love bass, but I don't like too distorted, the bass. I like it, strong, but I don't want to, there's no fun in that. So anyway, I remember New Year's as a kid, you'd wait for the New Year to roll in, and it felt like you were waiting forever. Like 12 o'clock was like light years away. You couldn't get to it. And when you did, it was like some magical, place. Now I'm up all the time past 12. I'm up till 2, even sometimes after 2. So now it doesn't seem like it's that late, 12. When I used to listen to talk radio at night, I'd put the AM on, I'd have the volume, loud enough where I could hear it from like 4 feet away. And there was a guy, he was on 10 to 2, which I love that time, be a DJ, 10 to 2, dark room talking, maybe in some, cozy little building somewhere in town. And I'd listen to him from like 10 to, 10:20, and then I'd go into a deep sleep. And then sometimes I'd kind of wake up, and I'd say I left the radio on, and I could hear, and then I'd fall back asleep, for like a couple of minutes. I'd notice it. And then sometimes sound carries at night. My father would come in and say, shut that off. I can hear it all the way inside. Shut it off now. And I'd shut it off. And then other times I would hear the ending. I'd wake up at like 2, and I would hear, all right, goodbye. This is the end of the broadcast. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, wow, 2 o'clock. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Got some gloves over here. Look at these gloves. Got them the other day. You never know. You never know when you're gonna need good gloves. I need a little knife. That's a thick plastic piece here. I don't want to rip the leather. They are leather. Smell that leather. It smells like cow's ass. So, you need them. Very comfortable. Yeah, these are nice. Breathable, water resistant at the same time. Yeah, sometimes I think to myself, you know what, I'm getting older, that's what I'm doing. And I like to visit remote locations on the planet, like the most northern point in Alaska. I'd like to see that. That is that Barstow. I think they changed the name. I'd like to see maybe Siberia. You know, there's a lot of old women there live alone. They're in their 90s. Like to visit them. See what are you doing here? And then I like to go to a Chinese forest, walk around a little bit. Antarctica. Like to go down there, tip of Argentina, and then take that boat across the was it the Drake? I want to say the Drake equation, but it's the Drake Passage, maybe something like that. I don't know. Very rough, choppy water. Go down there, see Argentina. You walk upside down, you don't even notice it. I find that weird, you know. Be out in space, looking at the planet, and I know there's no such thing as up and down in space. That's all relative, depending on which way your spaceship is. That's up, that's down. But here on Earth, we've made down, south, and north up. But there is no north up, and you know that's an illusion. But when you're looking from, you know, say you're out 300 miles from the planet, you see the planet. Well, it's something's going to be upside down, right? So if you're coming in like this, right here on the bottom would be Antarctica. But then when you go to land there, everything seems upright again. Step out 300 miles again and look at it, and everything's upside down. So you would think somebody walking there would be walking as if they're, you know, upside down walking. But it doesn't work that way. Very deceptive. So I'd like to see all these remote locations. Like I'm not interested in climbing it, but Mount Everest. I'd like to go to the base. I hear they have people that make nice handmade towels, nice handmade blankets. I'd like to buy some of that stuff. Nice blanket made by people in Nepal. Go see Pakistan, northern Pakistan. Russia, right? That part of Russia, Kamchatka, that's right across from Alaska. I'd like to go there. Been to Alaska already, so I've done that. Remote islands. Big fan of these islands that are in the middle of nowhere. You know, maybe they're like 1,000 miles away from the closest civilization. I'd like to visit some stuff like that. But you got to do it soon. You know, you don't want to be 80 years old still planning this. You want to do it when you still can walk without a cane. If you need a cane, you're going to be in trouble if something happens. But there's a few places like that. I go to Google Earth quite often, and I, you know, snoop around the planet trying to find interesting locations to visit, and I have found many. But some of them are impossible to get to. Ellesmere Island, St. Ellesmere Island in Canada, beautiful. I would love to be dropped off there. One of those planes that land on the water. And then, you know, tell them come in like, I don't know, 5 days, pick me up. But Ellesmere Island, I'd like to go to Yellowknife. The jungles of South America, I'd like to visit there. You know, but you got to do it when you're younger. You do it when you're too old, you may require a hospital on one of those journeys, and you can't find one because the nearest hospital is like, you know, 300-400 miles away. Let me think of another. I'd like to be in a boat right on top of the Mariana Trench. Like to say, you know what, right now, this is the deepest part of the ocean anywhere in the world, and I'm on top of it. Maybe throw your house key in there. Goes all the way to the bottom. Trying to think what else is interesting. Panama Canal, that would be a good sight. But I'm interested in extremes, like seeing monster mountains like Everest, K2, anything along that area, you know, where Nepal, Pakistan, China, they merge. That area seems to be very violent. crashing into each other and creating mountain ranges. I'd like to go there, but like I said, kind of far, and you're getting older, and it gets harder every year. You get a little bit older. Yep. I think I'm the only one out in the backyard. Everybody else is probably sleeping or watching television. I realized I kind of miss listening to him, because I was kind of watching a little bit of him on YouTube the other day, and I remember when he was at the top of his game, and that person is Phil Collins from Genesis. Yeah, he had a bunch of good tunes. I remember, they needed a lead singer, and I don't know why they didn't consider him right off the bat, but eventually they did, and he fit in quite well because he was part of the band to begin with. But his solo career was awesome. He had a bunch of, those kind of songs that you feel inside. Yeah, that was him. That was him. Take a Look at Me Now. Beautiful tune. Beautiful tune, good meaning. Yeah, can imagine the heartbreak that I think he wrote it, with what he had to go through to come up with those kind of lyrics. So I'm probably going to wrap it up. Tomorrow's Sunday. Sunday is like any other day now. But when I was a kid, Sunday was very quiet. You wake up and you half of the, not half, 85% of all stores were closed on Sunday. There was not much to do. Nowadays, you don't care. Now I never go to the mall. As a matter of fact, I find the mall to be a headache for me these days. But in those days, it was like, what do you want to do? Let's go to Sears. My father would take us to Sears, kill some time. We pop into Hickory Farms, pick up a salami, go home, slice it up. Nowadays, you need something, you go Amazon, pick it up, type out what you want, and they send it to you immediately. Especially if you live in a big city. Some of these things I get overnight. I buy something, it's here by the morning. I look out, and package. But in those days, Saturday was the big deal. But then Sunday was like the brakes were on. Everything was closed. You only had these little stores that were open, and that's the day you wanted something. Your father would say, if it was Monday, I could get you that, but stores are closed. And then they passed laws that allowed stores to open from like noon to 6. And, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty good. Now they're open, regular hours, which I prefer. But in those days, if you wanted to learn how to drive, my father, he would say, you want to drive today? Actually, I would tell him, I want to drive today. And he'd say, all right, get in the station wagon, we're going to go to the mall. And the mall was closed, and I'd get in there and start, driving around in circles and all that. Now, I don't know, you gotta get your permit now and go driving on the street. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.